today we're talking about inclusion.
Yep.
You know, and I want to qualify by not just inclusion in terms of representation, but inclusion from a contribution standpoint. What are your thoughts on inclusion in the corporate world within, obviously, Procter Gamble, and how do you think, is it important, and if so, why?
It is so important. Frankly, in my view, there's nothing more important right now because, and it does involve, first of all, some representation. You got to have that.
Okay.
You got to start with, equality. There should be equality between men and women.
I agree.
There should be equality in race.
I agree.
LGBTQ, people with disabilities,
I agree.
economic, religious, because when you have that equality, that creates diversity, and then when everybody's included, then what you do is you get a lot more innovation. You get a lot more creativity. I see this all the time. Some of the best work we have right now are on brands that have the greatest level of diversity and inclusion. Olay is one of our best brands. Fantastic equality and inclusion. SK2, another good example, always. Because what it does is it creates the ability to draw the best out of everybody and get different points of view. And if you don't have that, and you can have representation without inclusion, because
that's right.
Because of just being there, you've got to then behave in such a way where you're drawing people out, where you're trying to get their idea, where you're listening to different points of view, and that's when you get breakthrough.
Yeah, and the thing is, the thing that's important, I think that's very important, is to make that finer distinction, right? Because, every black person, every gay person, every white person, every woman, every, underserved or underrepresented area of society isn't psychologically the same.
Right.
So it's not just about ethnic or
race
sexual
or
preference. It's also about the psychographics. How do you guys address that? Because in the room, what matters is the idea, right? That's what matters in the room.
What has to happen is what you really have to do is you have to have understanding.
Okay.
And you have to have understanding through conversation.
Okay.
When you have conversation, then you get understanding, then you get attitude change, then you get action. And what has to happen is leaders, marketers, creatives, agencies have to inspire conversation. You have to be willing to make yourself vulnerable. Throughout this entire piece, I would pull folks aside and say, talk to me about this. There was this one part where we showed this spot, an earlier cut, to a group of black employees, and they said, you don't have it right. So what do you mean you don't have it right? I said, you haven't depicted men correctly. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. So I had to pull Dame and a couple aside. What are you talking about? He said, we've got him too passive. He's too behind the scenes. You're reinforcing a stereotype. I said, wow. That's what you do. That's where you get insight. Conversations drive insight. And then that creates creative breakthrough and business breakthrough.
Right, and that's what impacts the bottom line.
That's right.
So what you're saying is when you're more open to other ideas, when you're more open to the stories that exist within society, when you allow your company to be open to those ideas,
absolutely,
and you receive those ideas, you can actually incorporate those learnings and drive it to the bottom line.
You got it. And one of our best performing brands, Olay, they have, again, one of the most intersectionally diverse groups. They've got 50-50 male, female again. They've got black, Hispanic, Asian, whole group, LGBTQ. They created this campaign called Fearless to Face Anything.
Okay,
tell us about that. It's an insight about how women are often judged. Judged to be too strong, too ambitious, too emotional. And they defied that judgment. And they just crossed out 2 on every single one of those. They had Allie Raceman doing part of this. It was just fantastic. But that came from this really diverse group and a very inclusive group, having conversations and creating breakthrough. And that brand, I tell you, that already has 96 million impressions in just a few weeks.
So how do you, so that's obviously a success story. How do you deal with the brands that are a little more deeply entrenched in that old school thinking, that kind of my way or the highway thing, the good old boys club? How do you address that?
Well, part of it is what you do is you have conversations with them. You inspire them with great work. We've seen, you're going to see some great work coming out of Gillette pretty soon. That is going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing because what it is it's basically It's going against the whole notion of harmful masculinity.
It's going
and
against.
harmful masculinity.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
alpha male behavior.
Yeah,
Bystanding.
Yeah.
It's not okay to stand by.
that's right.
But it's basically the new definition of the best a man can get.
Let's go in a different direction for a second. Controversy, right?
Yeah.
You have political controversy. Now, here's the interesting thing about your company.
Yep.
You guys have so many brands that represent so many things to so many people. You have a brand for every side of every argument.
Pretty much.
So how do you address that? Like, how does that? Yeah, how do you address that? How do you handle
It's a
it?
really great question. One of the things is when a brand comes up with a point of view on something. First of all, the reason why we come up on points of view of things like social issues, sustainability, and whatnot is because people expect it more from us now. People are looking for brands. What's your point of view? They want to know who's behind that camera. They want to know who's behind that brand, who's behind that company. And the more they know that they're human beings, it's amazing. But it has to have something to do with the brand. So fearless to face anything on Olay has something to do with fearlessness
Right.
of aging.
Right.
Because aging has been this thing that they've stood for, or
Right.
anti-aging for many, many years. And they said, no, we got to flip that a little bit. Don't be fearful of aging, be fearless of anything.
That's right.
Always. A feminine protection product.
Right.
It chose to take on the phrase like a girl. You do that like a girl. An insult.
Right.
Before they did like a girl, 19% of people thought that was a positive statement. Now 76% think that's a positive statement because it had something to do with the brand, because what they addressed was confidence in girls.
You know what? Just
That's what they did.
you just hit on to something to me that's very, very interesting. The company that you're in charge of that brand, and for that company, you impact the psyche.
Yeah.
The collective. It's such a big company. It impacts the collective zeitgeist.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
So you have to take that into consideration
Absolutely.
when you put together a marketing plan or strategy.
We are the world's largest advertiser.
Right.
We touch 5 billion people a day on the
Right.
planet,
Right.
multiple times a day with advertising. So we have an obligation to use our voice as a force for good. And when we
That's
do
right.
use it as a force for good, we do affect the psyche. It does affect perceptions, because what happens is every image, if it's in advertising, if it's in media, if it's on the news, affects perceptions, because what it does is embed memories, and that memory forms a bias, and people are biased because they're human beings. So what we realize is our advertising has to have an accurate and positive portrayal of people. So that's why our industry,
Accurate being
accurate.
being really important. right?
Exactly. It's got to be accurate.
Yeah.
It can't be a stereotype.
That's
can't
right.
be. It's got to be an accurate portrayal, and then we try to pivot that to make it even more positive. Because when that happens, then what people will start seeing is they will start seeing gender and race and LGBTQ and people with disabilities as in a light that is normal. First of all, it's accurate.
Accurate.
And then
accurate.
And then it'll become normalized as opposed to stereotypical.
We're pulling the veil off of people's eyes.
That's exactly
And you're
right.
using the power of advertising and branding to do it.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I don't know if you heard of the ANA #SeeHer movement.
Yeah, I've been hearing rumblings
I
about
tell
it.
you, get involved in that, because it's the accurate and positive portrayal of women and girls in advertising, media, and others. We're doing another one for the Alliance for Inclusive and Multicultural Marketing.
Tell us
we're
about
now going to create the same movement for race and all cultures, because that also needs to happen. Because what happens is when you have these inaccurate portrayals of black men and women and Hispanics and Asian and LGBTQ, then people form biases which are negative. We can flip that.
And I also think that, I harp on this point, but I belabor it a little bit, but it's important. It's not only about ethnicity or sexual preference or
Right.
gender. It is about how you think.
Yes.
Because everybody thinks differently, right?
Exactly. Right.
So, the thinking, there's diversity in thinking, not just diversity in the physical appearance.
Absolutely.
There's
Yes.
internal diversity that has to be there
come
as well.
out, because
Right.
and that's where you have to generally break down the walls.
Right.
What happens, unfortunately, is some of the physical appearances create walls because they create
Exactly.
biases. And once you break that down, then you get into that thinking, and then when that thinking, you start getting amazing creative ideas, amazing innovations, and that's what business is all about.